Here we go from Insider, Business Insider. Fauci says U.S. still planning for COVID-19 booster after 8 months. Biden said shots could be administered after 5.
I know some people who already got theirs, and it hasn't been 8 months.
Wow. Mm-hmm. There was a tweet I saw where they were like, well, now all the data's screwed up because we had like the regimen, 2 shots, and then we'll track what happens. And now people are getting more. And look, I say it all the time. When there's a report we also have. Let me see if I can pull this up. This is from Timcast.com. Switzerland warns of potential terror attacks on vaccination sites. The Swiss Federal Intelligence Service voiced its concern with the national newspaper of the weekend. That is horrifying. If people go to their trusted medical professional, do some research or whatever, make a decision for themselves, and that means they want to go get the vaccine, they should be allowed to do it. Nobody should be stopping people from getting medicated, whatever that medication might be. Because there are a lot of people who are like, that particular antibiotic is bad for this reason. It's like, dude, mind your own business. And so when it comes to Fauci and Biden, another discussion around 5 months, they'll get a booster. The problem is not, in my opinion, the vaccine. The problem is the authoritarianism.
That is the problem with it.
Yeah.
You see,
I was vaccinated. Like, the problem is telling everybody what to do.
And making listen,
I was talking to okay. I mean, we get to have decisions to make for ourselves.
I was talking to a lefty friend of mine, and I said, you are supporting a massive guaranteed no liability contract for big pharma. It's the opposite of universal health care. And if this goes through, you will never see universal health care.
That's interesting. The other thing too is there have been, anytime anyone tries to make a report about some concern with the vaccine, that gets squashed by social media instantly.
Oh, that's right.
So there's no way to have a public conversation because everyone's opinions have already been bought and sold. Yep. So you're not allowed to.
The rules. For instance, here, Putin says no to mandate vaccine mandates. Have you guys confirmed this at all? Because
I didn't see that.
I saw the reporting.
Who's reporting on it? Because I can't find any large organization reporting on this. I've got WeLoveTrump.com, Corona News 123.wordpress. Like, who? But okay, what? Talk about authoritarianism or the lack thereof when the Russian premier is decided president, as what he's called. They're not going to do mandates if that's real. I think this all comes down, it hinges on
then they'd have to give it away anyway, so maybe that's part of it.
What do you mean?
Well, they don't want to pay for all those vaccines for their entire population. Maybe, I don't know.
Good point. Yeah, another reason. But it just, this entire thing hinges, whether or not these people are Nazis, whether blah, is like, what's the threat level of COVID?
This story is actually pretty old. I've got something from, this is funny, it didn't come up on Google, but it came up on DuckDuckGo. Huh. Putin says Russia won't make COVID vaccines compulsory, but skepticism remains a problem. It's from May 27th.
Interesting.
I Google searched it, I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
This is from a day.
And then I went on DuckDuckGo and it popped right up.
Okay, maybe it's just a resurged article. I know he got the vaccine.
Or maybe he said something recently. Isn't it crazy? I saw a comment where somebody, I think it was on Reddit, where they were talking about how, emigrating to the United States and wondering if now they actually want to go back, to Russia.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because of what's happening in the United States is it's absolutely insane.
Dude.
I mean, look.
Absolutely insane.
I hear these stories from friends where they're like,
watch this.
They're like, oh, my friend texted me, about like being friends with you or like, someone will say something like, oh, I got a text from a friend where they were like, I can't believe you would be friends with this person or that person. I can't believe you would watch this show or that show. Oh, you watch Alex Jones? Like, how could you watch or listen to Dave Rubin? He's far right. Tim Pool. And I'm like, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of being a kid and having people being like, I can't believe you turned away from the church. I can't believe it. What's happened to you? And it's like this level of dogmatic faith and this emotional manipulation of messaging someone and saying these things. I'm like, yo, these people are in a cult.
Well, it's apostasy, right? Because you've committed apostasy. That's what it is.
Here's the important thing. When someone would join a cult back in the day, you could take them away from the cult and deprogram them. But you had to get them away from the cult. Mm-hmm. You can't do it anymore. It's their phone.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's linked into their minds.
Well, and now they're fed back that same algorithm. So it's very hard to break away from that. You have to go to DuckDuckGo.
Yeah. Apparently, even then, when I searched Putin vaccine on DuckDuckGo, I got Putin gets coronavirus vaccine from March.
Well, you got to search for the title, like Putin says no vaccine mandate.
Yeah. You're right. I'm not an expert with searches.
Search for the words.
Search for them.
You will find them.
Give me the words, Tim.
I just searched for on DuckDuckGo Putin vaccine mandate, and then a bunch of stories popped up. Putin says no compulsory vaccines.
Yeah, rock.
I mean, to be fair, Biden said no compulsory vaccines.
Oh,
but
it's from RT. Okay.
Well, but he lied.
Well, I got CNBC right here.
Cool.
Well, the government isn't like the federal government isn't doing it. Bill de Blasio is doing it at the city level.
Yeah, but
all these other cities, like San Jose is doing it.
Yeah, and New Orleans and San Francisco, and they're all doing this with the full backing of the federal government. Biden goes out there and says that he wants everybody to do this. He encourages big companies to. I think it was just recently, like the other day, when the FDA approved the vaccine. What was it, like a week ago?
Yeah.
And he encouraged big companies to require all their employees to get vaccinated.
This is another really weird thing that I've talked about before, but people keep emailing me claiming that the Pfizer vaccine isn't FDA approved. And they're using, like, it's the weirdest thing, a twisted semantic argument that is not true.
Oh, that's the, like, other drug that has a different name?
Comirnaty?
Yeah.
Which is literally the exact same vaccine as per the FDA letter. And so when Bannon was here, he mentioned this, and I was like, I don't think that's true. And I Googled it, and I'm like, it says right here, it is the vaccine that is approved. And then I got a bunch of emails like, Bannon is right, Tim. Take a look at this. And there are a bunch of articles like, Patriot, National, info or whatever. And it says something like, take a look at this letter. And so I read the FDA letter, and it literally says the formulation is identical and interchangeable, but one is the marketing brand. Either can be used because they're the same thing.
What he was saying, I thought, was that Pfizer has a bunch of different vaccines that it's working on, and only one of them has been FDA approved. That's the Comirnaty one. So when people say the Pfizer vaccine is FDA approved, they're not being accurate because it's one of the Pfizer vaccines that's
There's
approved.
one COVID-19 Pfizer vaccine. It is being marketed as Comirnaty. They are the same exact vaccine under just different names. The FDA letter says it is commonly known as the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which will now be marketed as Comirnaty. They are interchangeable and an identical formulation. And so for some reason, people are claiming, they're actually two different ones. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
No,
is
they're not.
Pfizer working on other COVID vaccines? I don't know. But I thought that's what Steve was saying.
So people keep emailing me this thinking that there's some like underhanded scheme to like trick people into thinking that Comirnaty is available, but it's not really. That way they're not liable. And it's like, no. Just like, did you read it? And so I just took a quote from the letter, and it says like, these are identical, interchangeable, and the same exact formulation. And I email it back. I'm like, I don't know why you thought that was true. Did you read the letter?
Right.
But people, I think it's because when a lot of people said, oh, I'm not going to get it until it's FDA approved.
Right.
And that was their like rationale. And then once it got approved, they needed to maintain a rationale.
Well, then that was Biden's whole speech last week, was like, all you people who were waiting for it, now it is.
I think just assert
so everyone just get it.
if you really are like, just say it. Just publicly state how you feel about it and don't rely on semantic arguments.
Right. And maybe if you don't want to get the vaccine or any medical treatment, then that's kind of up to you.
It's up to you, and I am not going to give people medical advice.
When it comes to like mandating it, and whether those people are Nazis that want the government to mandate this, is like, how dangerous is COVID? That's what we have to ask. Because when people got polio and were getting paralyzed, they didn't say it was authoritarian Nazism to mandate a vaccine.
Yeah,
they just
did.
did it. Well, maybe they did, actually.
did.
I wasn't around. My dad got it. He took it on the arm.
There were a lot of people who didn't want to get it. And also the federal government at the time put out a few different statements saying, as people get this vaccine, people are going to die. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's from the vaccine. People die anyway. And sometimes these things are going to be coincidental.
The CDC says it very, very bluntly. They've said it to me in a statement as I interviewed people. I actually interviewed one of the highest guys at the CDC in like his full military uniform a few years ago. And they said, we know there are side effects and adverse effects. We know that some people face problems, but percentage-wise, it is substantially better that people get vaccinated than not, even with the side effects. Basically, they're saying the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the risk from the vaccine is substantially lower than the risk from not getting it for society as a whole. So my thing is like, I'm very much for the individual. I think you have to find someone you trust when it comes to medicine, a medical professional, and come to a personal decision that I'm not going to make for you. I don't want to get sued.
That's even what you were saying, talking to that CDC official a few years ago. That's even different than the messaging we're getting now, right?
No, I don't think so. I think it's on their website. The CDC literally has
okay.
Yeah.
But from the mainstream media, from social media, from like the way that message is interpreted, that sounds very reasonable, right? The way that message is interpreted is almost as though to say the American public is too stupid to figure out what
Bloomberg
to do.
Literally said that.
Yeah. And so, the way it's interpreted is that people are not trusted to make their own decisions. That's the problem, right? If that was what we hear all the time and people were like, oh, that's interesting, I'm going to make my own decision, I'm going to think about it. But people are told not to think about it, to just do what they're told. And that's the issue. That is the problem.
This is why I think it's all collapsing. Wow. First, we got the failure of Afghanistan, the absolute chaos of the Biden administration. Donald Trump was anti-elected. So people voted not for Biden, they voted against Trump.
Yeah,
but it's like to the most
clearly.
extreme degree I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. You have economic crisis, labor shortages, and you have no national unity. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean just like obviously there's a culture war. I mean quite literally a crisis happens. There's 15 days to slow the spread. And then instantly, every single grifter of grifters comes out to make money. The pharmaceutical companies want no bid guaranteed, no liability contracts. The government just says, fine. Then all of these local jurisdictions are like, I don't care. I don't want to be held responsible. So whatever that guy says, you do. Mm-hmm. All that's happening is people are saying, I want nothing to do with you. I want stuff for me. Like I said, what we're seeing is the elites knowing that we hit an iceberg and they're stealing all the silverware and running to the safety boats before anyone realizes what's happening. This
was interesting, too, the other day. So we have a mayoral election going on in New York City. De Blasio is going to be out, which is great. Eric Adams is he won the Democratic primary in June. He was the Brooklyn borough president. He's relatively popular. He was not the far left candidate, so people were displeased that he won that primary. But anyway, he's running against Curtis Sliwa, who was recently doing doing a campaign event that was interrupted by a homeless guy who started yelling about stuff. And Sliwa went over to him. He wasn't mic'd, he just went over and started talking to the guy and being like, talking to him like a human being, which obviously he is. What's your situation? Are you supposed to be taking medication? Have you been hospitalized? And the guy breaks down and says, I don't want to be a burden to anybody. I don't want to do this to everybody. And Sliwa was like, no, you're not. You're our responsibility.
And then he asks him, do you want to stand here with us?
Yeah. Now, the current administration, de Blasio's wife, Chirlane McCray, tweets out if you see homeless people, call the homelessness outreach line. You had Bloomberg saying, previously saying, if you see homeless people in need of help, don't help them yourself. Call somebody and call the homelessness outreach to go help them. And I think this is part of it too. We don't take any responsibility for our neighbors. We don't take any care for the people around us. We assume that there's always somebody else who's supposed to do that thing, and that maybe we should let them know, hey, there's someone bleeding to death over here. I'm going to be late for coffee, so I can't do it. You deal with it. And we see that all over the place in our culture, where we are supposed to put our trust in the government. We saw this with Obama, and I think in a lot of ways this goes back to Obama. Obama had this whole video for Obamacare, right? That was this woman, and I think her name was Julie in the advertising, and she was just all by herself. And at every turn, the government was there to help her, right down to at a certain point she had a child, and the government was there to help her. She had a child. There was still nobody else in the picture at that point. There was still just her and the child. There was no one else that there was no father, right, is my point.
That's bad marketing.
It was weird marketing at the time. And I remember looking at it being like, I don't want to have a baby with the government. That's not, I'm not up for that. That's weird and creepy. And that's where we've landed. I was recently, again, Facebook with people that I've known for a long time or whatever. And there was a woman who was saying that someone in California had come up with a lot of money for homelessness housing. And she found this infuriating because this was a private guy. And she was like, why do we need this private guy to come up with homelessness housing? It's not his responsibility. The government should be doing this. And I was like, no, this guy should be doing it. If he thinks that this is his responsibility to take care of people, then he should be doing it. Obviously. We can't just have a government and say everybody just rely on the government and the government will come and interfere in every aspect of our lives. We should want to take responsibility for each other. We should want to care about our neighbors and be cared about. Why do we not want that? There was an old woman who died next door to me. I had only met her 2 times. And I felt so stupid that I had, barely ever interacted with her. And then her son shows up to clear out her apartment. And he's like, you knew my mother? And I was like, dude, I met your mother twice. Like, please don't give me her valuable things. I don't,
Yeah, I'll give a shout
out. I
am
am garbage who lives next door to her. Like, I never,
shout out to Luke's video we mentioned before. I think it's called like Just Keep Going, You Got Nothing to Lose. Luke Rutkowski from We Are Change. And it's this old video he made back like 10 years ago where he's like, I take the train every day in New York and there's millions of people, but I noticed they never talk to each other. So one day I decided to just start talking to these people. And then he films and asks them questions that get kind of weird, like, do you trust the government? But I think it's funny, and it makes a good, emotional point anyway, that like people in New York City, they live around each other. They're not neighbors. Neighbor is the wrong word.
That is exactly the wrong word.
Remember
There's
when
actually
Mr.
a
Rogers
sign.
would say, hello, neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
That meant something.
Yeah, that's
now
not,
it's like, you're not my neighbor. Like, you live next to me and you yell too much.
Yeah, I've actually started trying to like talk to the people in my building now. Ever since this woman died, I was like, well, that sucks. And so I've tried to talk to people and they just kind of look at me, but I think I'm gonna keep it up. But there's this, there was a sign on the MTA, speaking of not talking to each other on the MTA with COVID, right? So there were 3 options and the MTA let you know which one was the appropriate option. The first option was 2 stick figures having a conversation with no masks, looking animated, having a conversation. And it said, not this. The next one was people wearing masks having a conversation, and it said, not this. And then the final one was 2 people looking down separately at books, not looking at each other, having no communication at all. And the MTA was like, this is what we want you to do. Don't talk to anybody. Wow. Don't look at anybody. Don't be near anybody. Don't exist with other people. Just live in your own literal bubble behind your face covering and go about your business.
That's the brave new world we live in.
Yeah, that's what happens when you let the corporations take over, man. Whether it's the city, the state, the corporation, the centralized authority makes these stupid machine-like rules and restrictions on humans when we're not machines.
I watched this movie. I think it's called 2149, where it's like people live in concrete pods their whole lives, and all they do is play video games, and they interact just by typing, and that's like the world.
That's the E.M. Forrester story also, The Machine Stops. Did you ever read that?
No, what's that?
It's a free download, in fact. You can get it because it's out of, copyright. The Machine Stops. E.M. Forrester wrote this book 1914, 1918. I don't know when it was, something like that. And all of these people live underground in their own little studio apartments. And whenever they need anything, they ask the machine for it. And the machine will provide it, whether it's food or anything else. Whenever they want to talk to each other, they all deliver lectures on basically telescreens. It's basically the internet, and that's how they talk to each other. And they respond.
1909.
1909. Wow. There you go.
Super
yeah.
old. Interesting.
Yeah, this is a fascinating story. And
so basically, he predicted people sitting in their mom's basements.
Yes.
Playing Warcraft.
Yeah, and he predicted online dating as well.
Whoa.
Because the main character, this woman, I think her name's Vashti or something. So she lives in her little underground cubby. She delivers lectures through telescreen, and most of her lectures, most of the things she delivers, she talks about are responses to other people's lectures. And it is at the beginning of the story, she talks about how she was listening to a symphony and there was a glitch in it. And when she first heard the symphony with the glitch, she was very upset, and she was, wanted to complain about this glitch, and now she wouldn't recognize the symphony without it.
Creepy.
It's very creepy. And also she has a child, but she had a child with a man who showed up. They, engaged, had a child, and he left, and she never saw him again. So it's Tinder, it's Siri, it's like everything. It's Amazon. And then, of course, the machine breaks down. And so all of the people, eventually, they start like pouring out of their cubbies, and the little transport system doesn't work. And her son, who had contacted her, makes his way to the surface to breathe air for the first time, and it's poison and it kills him and he dies. But you know,
Yikes.
Wow.
E.M. Forrester is amazing.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.